Hello again. You're watching the second hour of the Tuesday edition of the Midday View on eNCA DSTV channel 403. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, let's bring you this story about SARS, which has issued its annual report that says its revenue collection improved due to a better-than-expected economic recovery. That's a bit of good news. It was briefing Parliament's Standing Committee on Finance earlier today. Its report also showed its revenue performance improved by 38 billion rand. That's really good news. Well, to tell us more about what came out of this briefing is my colleague, eNCA reporter Heidi Giokos. Heidi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. A bit of good news, putting a smile a little bit on our faces. I mean, under COVID-19 conditions, one expected the economy to continue to take a bettering, but SARS is saying it managed to collect more money.
Yes, for once I have good news. I'm always the bearer of bad news. But it seems as though SARS has been able to collect over 38 billion rand more than what was predicted. And as you mentioned in your introduction, this had a lot to do with them expecting the economy to not grow as much as it did because of the COVID-19 pandemic and 2.2 million people losing their job under this pandemic. So it seems as though SARS is saying that they were able to collect a lot more. That figure specifically being 1.5 trillion rand in the last financial year. So this is a big amount for SARS, but of course, this is their job. They need to collect this. What's also significant here is the fact that their chief revenue officer says because they have been able to improve their systems. We do know that under that SARS commission that happened about 2 years ago, we heard about how their systems weren't up to date. They had a lot of technical issues. A lot of their officials were not put in the key positions to make sure that there is proper revenue collection, and there were also major issues with those refund issues that were brought up. We do know that SARS has been able to collect more revenue because they've been able to streamline their processes. But let's listen to the officer of revenue collection at SARS.
For the period under review, 172 billion rands that we have been able to collect from those specific activities that we have undertaken as a tax administration. And I think, Chair, it's important to note that the 172 billion reflects 14% of the overall collection that the Commissioner spoke about from a net perspective. And it is made up of a number of pieces of work that we have actively pursued under the period under review. And I'll highlight a few, Chair. We are a deeply segmented organization and we take a segmentation approach. You would then see that as we report on the revenue, I will speak to where it came from our operating arrangements, as well as the segmented areas that we focus on. In particular, you will notice that 25.1 billion of that amount came from standardized operations. These are operations that are based in the 9 regions that we have formulated. But if I zoom into that, Chair, you would notice that quite a bigger portion of this comes from our effort in terms of debt cash collections.
Yes, Heidi, compliance, as we know, historically is also a big issue that the revenue collector always highlights. What did they say this time about compliance?
Yes, so they're saying that a lot, they've done a survey and they've been able to ascertain the fact that a lot more people are aware that they need to be compliant, there needs to be payment of tax, especially with these big companies. But what's interesting here, Bradan, is that what SARS has picked up is the fact that many people say, what's the point of paying tax, because it moves into government's hands and then you have these allegations of corruption, mismanagement of spending, irregular spending, and they feel as though what's the point of paying tax when it's not being
wasteful
channeled?
Expenditure as well?
Yes, what's the point of doing this if it's not going into the right hands for the right reasons? And that's something that they have picked up, and they're saying that tax compliance is still a major concern. It's been a concern for them, and it doesn't seem as though it's getting any better, despite the fact that they try and educate, they try and make sure that people understand what the repercussions are if you don't comply and if you don't do what you're supposed to do, because the tax man will come after you. But they are saying that they're trying by all means to have programs in place and to make sure that there are repercussions for those that don't adhere to tax regulations. Let's listen to the SARS Commissioner on that issue.
People feel more likely towards paying tax when there is trustworthiness in the system, when they find it easier to engage with SARS, and when we are deemed to be operationally efficient. That continues to be a work that focuses our minds. As I said, we have seen compliance levels taking a strain, and compliance levels at a composite level is only at 62.6%, which clearly is a concern for us.
Okay, let's just end our quick chat here about SARS on a different note. The Auditor General has reported back to Parliament as well today, and SARS was fingered as one of those portfolios that they've been looking into that didn't achieve a unqualified or clean audit.
Yes, so SARS is one of the portfolios that has been highlighted by the Auditor General as not receiving a clean audit. Now, this is a big concern. It's the revenue collector. It's the portfolio or the institution.
They hold us accountable with taxes, but
yes,
they don't have a clean audit.
They didn't get a clean audit.
What is this about?
So it's got to do a lot with irregular expenditure that dates back to 2016. One must remember that under the previous SARS Commissioner, we do know that there was no tax refunds that were being paid out, and there was a huge issue about how SARS was not doing its job to the best of its ability. So the SARS Commission is saying it acknowledges the fact that it did not receive a clean audit, but this dates back to irregular expenditure from 2016. And it also has to do a lot, Bradan, with the fact that they don't have enough staff on the ground. Remember, there was a massive exodus that happened at SARS, and this has a lot to do with the fact that they don't have the necessary people to make sure that SARS operates at its optimal. So we do know that the Commission is aware of this. They're saying they're trying their best to make sure that they get a clean audit next time around, but they have identified the issue as the fact that there's been irregular expenditure. What's also interesting is the fact that the Finance Minister, together with the Deputy Finance Minister, was not in that Auditor General briefing, and they have also been fingered as one of the institutions that have not received a clean audit. So hopefully we'll be able to get a clearer picture.
I love it when the AG cracks the whip. It doesn't matter who you are,
yes.
SARS or Treasury, they must do the right thing. I mean, after all, it's an audit. It has to be proper. Thank you very much, Heidi Giokos. They will have to wait and see how SARS will address that matter of not getting an unqualified clean audit.